Okay, let's dive into Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And by the time I've recorded this, obviously the game has happened, but then Bruce Arians has said things, I think, in his Monday morning press conference. Now listen, I've said from the jump, there was going to be a learning curve with Tom. He has been with the same offensive coordinator, what feels like for his whole career, but the second iteration of Josh McDaniels, right, happened after he got fired from Denver. Bill O'Brien took the Penn State job. Maybe Josh had gone to St. Louis for a year, got fired there too. Bill hired him back, and then they've been together for basically the last decade. He has been in the same offense, his offense, which he has created over time forever. Think about any job you've been in, if you've been in it for a long time, or a relationship for a long period of time, when you change out of that job or that relationship with that significant other, there is a growing period with the next person. Now, there's a natural honeymoon period because it's really cool, it's really easy, but eventually at that job or with your significant other, your new one, you're going to go through a little adversity. And it's going to be something that at your old place, you were used to handling. It was easy to pivot. You knew how to handle it. That's not the case in Tampa Bay. He's never worked with Bruce Arians. He's never worked with all these wide receivers. It's brand new. Now, let's face it. He threw a couple picks and a pick six. It looked a little weird. I think sometimes we forget that Tom Brady is 43 years old. And I admire the living hell out of the guy. I have him on my pantheon. It goes Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Tom Brady. Of just the guys whose desire, drive, willingness to do whatever it takes to win, all-time superstars in my lifetime. And after he scored that first touchdown, he let him right down the field. He gets the quarterback sneak. It's badass. You see the fire in the guy. The guy's 43. He's got 6 Lombardi. He's been to 9 Super Bowls. He's got unlimited money. He's got a supermodel wife who makes huge cash. Like, you'd say he's got the life by the balls. Yet he's still playing in Tampa Bay, a franchise that hasn't been to the Super Bowl or, even the playoffs in 12 years. But I respect it. I really do. Now, Bruce Arians is a high-level coach. I think a lot of people, and most high-level players in college, whether you're playing at Alabama, whether you're playing at Georgia, whether you're playing at LSU, whether you're playing for Kirby, whether you played for Urban Meyer, I think Mario Cristobal's like this. I know Chris Peterson at Washington was like this. Harbaugh, they get on guys. College players are used to having, getting ripped. That's part of football, especially your position coaches. You get lit into. And I think a lot of times in pro sports, definitely you see it in basketball. Like, you watch college basketball, Tom Izzo, Calipari, Coach K, they will light into a dude who's about to be the number 1 pick. They treat him, they coach him. And then once you get to the pros, you start making huge money, then you start dictating the shots and no coach can say anything to you. I think football's kind of somewhere in the middle. There's a select few coaches that can really get on guys. And I think sometimes coaches can be intimidated. Well, there's a couple old school coaches, obviously Belichick, who treated Tom for a long period of time, called him Johnny Foxborough when he'd screw up, and he lit into him. Where a lot of players of his level don't really get talked to like that. I don't think Aaron Rodgers gets lit up that often. Even Sean Payton, who does light into guys, I think they're pretty cool with Drew Brees. I don't think he's getting yelled at that many times in front of the team meetings. I could be wrong. And they always said this about the San Antonio Spurs and Tim Duncan in that dynasty, that Greg Popovich could treat him like the 15th man on the roster. And they said the same thing about the Patriots. Tom Brady was treated no different than Brian Hoyer or the backup linebacker or the starting right tackle. And that's where it sets the tone in your whole franchise. Well, Bruce Arians is a little different than Belichick in the sense of when he talks to the media, he's pretty open. And I respect that because I think it's easy to the one thing Belichick does is he says things to the media that just aren't true. Now, I also believe what you say to the media and what you don't say to the media ultimately doesn't matter that much. We'll get into optics a little bit later. I think it's the most overrated thing in football. Like we saw Tom, he struggled. He struggled a little bit last year. Now, this I kind of understand. He has new offensive weapons. There are new offensive lingo. There are offensive, the way and different things that you do within that offense, where to throw different guys open, different routes to run against different coverages might be different than New England. I don't know exactly, but Bruce Arians said after the game, directly after the game that the pick that he threw over Mike Evans' head was on Tom Brady. That's something that Bill Belichick would never have said. But that doesn't change the fact that the pick was on Tom Brady. And then today, on Monday, Bruce Arians was pretty open about, Tom Brady did things in practice we were ready for in the game, and he just didn't execute it in the game. And I saw on social media, a lot of the media members like, oh my God, no, Tom Brady is used to being held to a high standard. That's why he's the greatest quarterback of all time. He has been held to a high standard now, not openly in the media, but behind closed doors for 20 years. And definitely this last decade after he's had countless rings. And they just kept racking them up. Tom Brady wants that. The best players in football want to be coached. And this isn't Freddie Kitchens saying it. This isn't Ben McAdoo saying it. This isn't some rando saying it. It's Bruce Arians, who has a long resume of working with elite quarterbacks and running elite offenses. Like, he knows what he's doing. Tom also knows what he's signing up for. Bruce Arians' personality. And I think now it's going to be a little different because it's out there in the public. But again, we all saw it. Tom's passes on a couple of these, on the pick and the pick six, it just doesn't quite look like Tom Brady. And it's a mistake. It's a mistake that Jimmy Garoppolo or Dak Prescott or Jared Goff makes. It doesn't hide the fact whether Bruce Arians blames it on Tom Brady or blames it on no one. Who cares? It still happened, and they need to get it corrected. I'm sure they will. They play the Carolina Panthers this week. That's what I would call a get-right game. I'm not selling Tampa Bay down the river. Their defense is clearly really good. I think I heard, I have to look at the box score, 15 third downs. That means they were relatively containing the Saints offense. Obviously, one of the touchdowns was a pick six Tom threw, and another was he threw another pick. So you're giving them free possessions. Listen, they have so much talent on offense. The guy that I would say I have the biggest red flag on is Gronk. I saw people tweeting God, he looks like he's running like an old man. Does look like he's kind of old, even though he's not really that old, but he retired for a reason. It wasn't just because Belichick wasn't an asshole. It was because he wasn't the same physically. And maybe I thought he would have a bounce-back game. Just watch him that game. He looked slow. But they still got Mike Evans. They still got Chris Godwin. I think I'm a Rojo guy. Fournette will continue to gain a role as this thing goes. And Bruce Arians and definitely Tom Brady's resume speaks for itself. They are old school badasses. I do have faith that they will get it figured out. Now, the one kind of elephant in the room is at the end of the day, think about this. Breeze and Brady combined to be 83 years old, right? Tom's 43, Drew's 40. The combined ages of the coaches in the Niners-Arizona game was 81. I think Cliff's 41 and Kyle's 40. So it just shows you these guys are really, really old. So there is a chance, and we'll talk about some of these other quarterbacks, the older quarterbacks later, that you just hit 43, you're just not as sharp. Now, Tom's never ran, but he was always elite in the pocket. Maybe you just lose half a step. Maybe your accuracy diminishes just 0.5% or 1%. It gets to a point when you get to a certain age. I mean, I'm 35. I feel pains in my body when I get out of bed that I didn't feel 5 years ago. I played golf with a buddy on Saturday, and he was like, he was in his mid to late 30s. And he's like, what's crazy is I work out every day. And once I got to 28, 29, I couldn't just eat whatever I wanted. I had to change my diet. As you age, things change. And I understand he eats avocados and tomatoes. That there is a chance, and I'm leaving this as an option, though I still think even if he's aging, I mean, he is, but diminishing as a player, their talent around him, if he can get a hold of this offense, and the coach has proven that they will be able to score points. The Saints potentially are the best team in the NFC. I thought really they were last year, and then the Niners beat them in that crazy shootout, but I still thought they were the second best team in the NFC. Then they lost that inexcusable game to the Minnesota Vikings at home. But I would not just act like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are some 6-win team. I still expect them to win 9 or 10 games, compete to win the wild card. But they do. This month, I think it's fair to say, it's going to have its ups and downs as they get on the same page, as Tom learns his wide receivers, his personnel. It's one thing to run it in practice. It's another thing to run it in a game. And not just any game, against one of the best teams in the league. You learn something. And I've always been a believer of this. I think most people, I would imagine, listening to this, you learn the most through adversity. not through success. So if I was them, would I rather have a big win or a big loss? If you're talking week 1, I don't know if a big loss, and quote unquote big loss, you know what I mean, a loss that I think us on the outside views as, God, they just kind of got handled, because they kind of did. It's not the worst thing. I think they will learn from it, and if Tom isn't just physically shot, which I need a little more evidence before I just say that, I think they'll turn it around and be okay. What's up, everybody? My name is John Middlekauff, and I host a show for Colin Cowherd called 3 and Out on his podcast network. You can subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast. I worked in the NFL as a scout for Andy Reid and Howie Roseman, and I've been talking about football for the last 7 years. If you like your football talk, raw and unfiltered, no BS, I'm your guy. Subscribe to 3 and Out right now.